The news doesn't have to always be depressing.
What do you love about running?
It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
CBS News, 60 Minutes, Sunday on...
I think we're going to have new leadership in this party and in this country.
Santos has already been accused of lying about key parts of his life story. He is now the subject of a formal civil complaint to the Federal Election Commission.
Today, I'm calling on George Santos to immediately resign.
Will you step down?
I will not.
He has to answer to the voters, and the voters can make another decision in 2 weeks.
Republican lawmakers are now demanding answers after CBS News first reported that roughly 10 documents with classification markings were found at an office that Biden once used.
The irony, you couldn't write a book about this, right?
Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Robert Costa in Washington. Thank you for joining us. The roughly 10 documents with classification markings found at the Penn Biden Center and first reported by CBS News continue to draw heavy scrutiny here in Washington. And in his first remarks about the discovery, President Biden said Tuesday in Mexico City that he was surprised to learn there were government documents in his former private office. Today, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre faced questions from reporters on the discovery for the first time. She said the materials are still being reviewed. Our colleague Ed O'Keefe pressed her for more clarity on the timeline. Take a listen.
The president was asked yesterday, but did not answer this part of the question. Why didn't he or someone in the White House inform the American people when these documents were discovered on November 2nd? Did it have anything to do, because people are asking this part of it, did it have anything to do with the fact that the election was just a few days away?
Again, Ed, this is under review by the Department of Justice. It is literally under review right now. As I am talking to you, it is under review. So I'm not going to get beyond the process. I'm not going to get beyond what the president said. Look, the White House counsel, my colleagues in the White House counsel, laid out a very detailed information about what this particular issue on Monday. You all have that. I'm just not going to get beyond that. The Department of Justice is independent, as you know.
Republican reaction to the document story has been swift and fierce, much of it coming from the new Republican House majority. Yesterday, CBS News had the chance to sit down with another prominent Republican voice and a potential 2024 presidential candidate, former Vice President Mike Pence. We talked about all of it, as well as when he might decide on whether to run. We began by asking him about his own vice presidential records and if he can be sure none of them were taken from his time in office.
Our staff reviewed all of the materials in our office and in our residence to ensure that there were no classified materials that left the White House or remained in our possession. And I remain confident that that was done in a thorough and careful way. Clearly, in the waning days of the Trump-Pence administration, that process was not properly executed by staff around the President of the United States. And as I said, I'm not diminishing the importance of protecting classified materials. Particularly top secret materials. These are the nation's secrets. They bear upon our national security. But again, this issue to me is one of equal treatment under the law. And I just have to tell you the double standard.
Well, just to be clear, are you calling for a special counsel or not?
The Trump documents, I think it continues to undermine public confidence.
Let's talk about the future. Former President Trump right now is the only candidate running for the Republican nomination.
Right.
Nobody has yet to jump in the race against him for the nomination or for the nomination. Are Republicans afraid of former President Trump to take him on? Are you afraid of taking on former President Trump? If you say you're going to take months now to listen.
You know, the only thing we've decided for sure is that we weren't going to let anybody else make our decision for us. And, you know my approach to politics, at least over the last 20 years. I've sought to practice a kind of politics that reflects, I think, the civility and respect the American people show one another. if we choose to run, we won't run against anyone. We'll run for a set of principles and ideals that have always animated my career. But
especially for that evangelical vote in the Republican Party. You're starting a tour soon of mega churches around the country, and you have been on the forefront of the abortion issue on the right for decades now. We're in the backyard not only of former President Trump, but of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And last year he signed legislation for a 15-week ban on abortion. As someone who's been on the right in front of that issue for so many years, did he go far enough?
There's no greater cause than the cause of life. And when I think back on the record of the Trump-Pence administration, I couldn't be more proud. We rebuilt our military, we revived our economy, saw the nation through the worst pandemic in 100 years, but above all of that with those 3 Supreme Court justices, we gave the American people a new beginning for life. And for however much time I have left on this earth, I'm going to continue to labor in the cause of life. I truly do believe we need to make it our aim to restore the sanctity of life, the unalienable right to life, back to the center of American law. I welcome progress that's been made here in Florida, in my home state of Indiana, and all across the country. But I'll be joining some people at the March for Life next week, and I've made it very clear. It may take us as long to restore the sanctity of life to the center of American law as it took us to overturn Roe v. Wade, but I believe that far beyond the politics of that question, for the sake of the nation, we need to restore the sanctity of life.
And how far should the Republican Party go on abortion? If you were president and you had a Republican Senate and a Republican House, what would be the President Pence policy?
Well, I certainly would support any pro-life legislation that Congress would take up, but I do believe that this issue is likely to be resolved one state at a time. Before Roe v. Wade, the question of abortion was dealt with in each state across the country. And I expect that's ultimately where it will be resolved. But for me, for my wife Karen, whatever role we're playing in the future, whatever cause we feel called to, we'll be standing for the right to life.
How close are you to a final decision on a 2024 run? How close?
Well, we're giving it careful and prayerful consideration. But I must tell you, I think the truth is that I think we've got time. I mean, because of the opportunities we've had to serve our state and serve our nation, people around America know the Pences. They know us. And so we're going to take the opportunity of that time, and we're going to continue to travel. We're going to continue to listen. We're going to continue to pray. And I promise to keep you posted.
And final thing here, Mr. Vice President. You're here in the Villages in Florida. This has long been a haven for supporters of former President Trump and supporters of you as well. Mm-hmm. If you do decide to get in the 2024 race, do you believe that some Trump voters are now winnable, that they're not all a monolith at this point in 2023 in terms of where they go in the future?
Bob, I really believe that the 74 million people that supported us in 2020 are some of the most patriotic, common sense, conservative, freedom-loving people in this country. And I think whatever we feel is our calling in the primary process, that at the end of the day, the American people are going to sort it out. I think we're going to have new leadership in this party and in this country, and I have every confidence that our voters will rally behind our standard bearer, and will give the country a new beginning, to start back to the policies that we advanced in the Trump-Pence administration that left America stronger and more prosperous, and I have every confidence will again.
We appreciate your time, Vice President Pence.
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
We shall see. Former Vice President Pence, he could make that bid for a 2024 Republican nomination. That would be a major development in the emerging race for the White House. A closer look at how that possible candidacy could affect other possible Republican rivals. We'll do that after the break. For now, you're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
Original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely. As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, they are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
States from the plains to the northeast are bracing for more than 2 feet of heavy snow.
every second counts.
This is a monster winter storm.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
There's a wrinkle in the forecast, the accumulating ice.
You'll have time to get prepared.
Take precautions before you head out.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
The carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Not one more child!
School shootings have parents fighting mad.
I promised my daughter I was going to fight. It was going to keep on happening.
And teachers taking lessons in how to fight back.
This is an exercise.
We approach it as it's you or them.
It shouldn't have to be your teacher's job to protect your life.
But will the battle over gun control,
people are afraid that they're going to lose their gun rights altogether,
be the hardest lesson of all?
The exercise, you're having to shoot at an adult. Are you prepared to have to kill one of your students?
Guns in the Classroom, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Robert Costa. As former Vice President Mike Pence continues to travel around the country, he's wrapping up his book tour. He's far from the only Republican contender, the possible contender, looking at 2024. And if he enters the race, he would, of course, be running against his former boss. Fin Gomez, the political director for CBS News, joins us here at the table. Fin, just back from Florida, sat down with Pence. Most interesting thing to me, reporting-wise, is that he says no rush. He can take his time on a decision. Why, if it's not only Pence, but so many others who are looking at this race, say no rush? What's your assessment of the waiting game inside the Republican Party?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you rushed back from Florida. I know there's a lot of air travel snafus out there, but I think it's really interesting. It's an interesting dynamic because just a few months ago, there was a sense that if that everyone's going to jump in here, everyone's going to rush in. Now there's just this patience. There's no urgency. In part, what I've been told is because the first person who jumps in will automatically face off with Trump.
But Trump's not even holding events.
He's not. And that is the other side of that coin, though, is the fact that he isn't holding events. He's not doing anything. But there is a sense that what I was told is that there's this sort of wait and see until DeSantis jumps in. You know, when Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, jumps in, likely to jump in, when that happens, it'll be these two big candidates who are at the top of the heap going after each other, and the rest of the field can sort of go around them.
But how much is the waiting game, based on your private conversations with strategists and advisors, about waiting to see what happens to Trump legally?
That's part of it too. I mean, there's multiple investigations swirling around the former president, as we know. Even with a little bit of the focus now going towards President Biden with these, with the Biden docs investigation that's happening now. But seriously, it's really been this wait and see. One top Republican strategist just a week ago told me there really is a collective sense of the others seeing that there's blood in the water, right, when it comes to Donald Trump. And there's wait and see what happens. Will he run the full?
Well, I keep thinking back to 1992 presidential race. Bill Clinton does not get into the race until the fall of 91.
Yeah.
Why didn't he get into the race? Because everyone thought that Mario Cuomo, the governor of New York, is going to run. Cuomo doesn't run. It ends up being Clinton versus Paul Tsongas versus Jerry Brown. And everyone thought that George H.W. Bush, because of the Gulf War, was invincible. Yet all those assumptions ended up being wrong. Clinton wins the nomination, and then he wins the presidency in part because of this curveball in the candidacy of Ross Perot. All that's to say, we're in January of 2023. Part of the wait, I'm told as well from sources, is that they don't know what's going to happen to Trump politically. They don't know what's going to happen to Trump legally. And also, there's no need to start fighting for a party that's still kind of figuring out where it's going. And the real story in the party right now is the House Republican majority, not the presidential race.
Absolutely, especially after last week when it got so much attention. But there's a lot of these strategy sessions right now with these potential camps waiting for their bid to jump into the race.
They're also waiting to see what DeSantis does.
Exactly.
Because they know he's probably waiting until April, May, or June.
He's likely probably won't answer until after his session's over. I mean, and there's no rush. And you're right. And once he jumps in, he's got a lot of money, he's got a lot of attention, he's got a lot of momentum.
But you may need to get in if you're Larry Hogan, the Maryland governor, outgoing governor. If you are Chris Christie, the former New Jersey governor. Glenn Youngkin, he's given a big State of the State speech, right?
Got sworn in today. Yeah, absolutely. And with Larry Hogan, as you know, like his tenure ends on the 13th, we could see a movement right away, and he could garner that attention that he needs, likely for someone in his position within that heap of potential Republican candidates. So there might be some movements, but it's also this wait and see approach. There are always curveballs, Bob, as you know.
Does Liz Cheney run, for example? Is there going to be that anti-Trump candidacy?
Exactly. And I think you're going to see a few people in that lane. But again, one top Republican strategist told me that he believes it's going to be a wide field. That there's going to be a lot of people. That there's it's going to be maybe reminiscent of 2016.
And I remember so much about timing matters with announcements. When Michelle Bachmann, I was with her, the Minnesota Congresswoman, covering her when she won the Ames straw poll in Iowa in the summer of 2011, and she was having this moment. Michelle Bachmann, top contender for the GOP nomination. What happens the day after she wins the Ames straw poll in Iowa? Rick Perry, the Texas governor, jumps into the race. All the momentum she had from the straw poll in Iowa faded in an instant. And it became Rick Perry as the new star in the GOP. And so, yes, if you're Larry Hogan, maybe you get in sooner, try to generate a slow build. But for others, if they think DeSantis is going to get in May or June or July, they want to see maybe how that plays out.
Sure.
And Glenn Youngkin, he seemed like he was moving toward it a little bit based on reporting we had, but now doesn't seem to be totally embracing the idea of running, at least in terms of the actions he's taking publicly.
You're right, Bob. And in the field, the potential aspirants that we have right now, that could change in a month. That could change in a week.
And we still don't know what President Biden's going to do. He said he's moving to run, but we haven't. Do you have any intel on a Biden announcement?
I think all indicators, seem to show that he's going to announce at some point this year, early on this year. This was sort of the guidance before the holiday season. I don't think anything's changed. Even with this latest, focus on these Biden documents that were discovered recently. But still, I think there are, even in that party, there are some potential, 2024 contenders who are waiting in the wings. They said they'll support Biden, but especially amongst the gubernatorial ranks, that I think there's a lot of people.
After he had a big midterm election, I don't think he feels pressure to start making any announcement because he's going to say, we just kept the Senate. What are you doing? Why are you pressuring me?
Folks always underestimate Joe Biden, and you're right. And I think that's something that
he also
other
takes
Democrats
forever to
should avoid.
decide. When you think back to 2019,
he takes
it was month after month.
Man.
Where is Biden?
He takes forever.
I used to stake out the Penn Biden Center.
Yeah.
Because where was Biden that day? I mean, he used to have all these people come to his office to try to plead with him to run. He took his time way into 2019.
Yeah, and again, you know, a lot can change in a little bit of time.
And he may take his time again in 2023.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
A few years later. Finn Gomez, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, Bob.
We'll be right back with the chaos surrounding Congressman George Santos, the New York Republican. It's not over. Up next, more on the latest calls for him to resign and the response from the state Republican Party and the national GOP. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became a sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Back to Red and Blue. I'm Robert Costa. New York Republican Congressman George Santos, he says for now he will remain in office, though there are a growing number of calls for him to step down, to resign. The New York representative faces several probes related to lies that he told while on the campaign trail, alleged lies that he has said already he has misspoken about many things in his life in different interviews. So this has led to people like the Nassau County Republicans to speak out about him and his conduct at a press conference earlier today.
He has no place in the Nassau County Republican Committee, nor should he serve in public service.
There is no way for the public to ever have faith in his word.
He's a national joke, he's an international joke, but this joke's got to go.
For more on the questions surrounding Congressman Santos, CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland joins us from Capitol Hill. Scott, will the pressure from New York Republicans lead to pressure on Santos from congressional Republican leaders?
Just don't see how this is sustainable in the long term. Just think of the first 5 days on the job for George Santos. Today, he faces calls from fellow Republicans, including in the U.S. House Republican Conference, that he resign. That's one day after he was handed a formal ethics complaint by his own New York congressional colleagues, which was the day after the Federal Election Commission received a formal complaint about him, which was after days 1 and 2 on the job, in which he was sworn in the middle of the night and faced protests from constituents back home. That's week 1. So now the question to leaders in the House Republican Conference and the Speaker: should he stay? Should he resign? Speaker Kevin McCarthy speaking with reporters a short while ago.
Scott, what else are you hearing from congressional Republicans?
Apologies, we didn't get that clip for you. What Kevin McCarthy had said when speaking with reporters a short while ago is that it's up to the voters and not up to congressional leaders or those who are not elected by those specific constituents. So Kevin McCarthy, speaking with reporters earlier this evening, pushed it back towards the constituents. There were other Republicans who said this really is in the hands of the New York 3rd Congressional District, not in the hands of GOP leadership. In essence, washing their hands of this, and all expectations are George Santos will get a committee position or committee positions in this next Congress.
Which committees? The big committees or the small committees in terms of the stature and the high profile?
And in terms of the materials they get, right? Because the top-line committees often get sensitive information. The roster was released for new members of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, one of those A-list committees. He's not on there. We're waiting to hear about the other committees because they haven't organized yet. Everything's been delayed, Bob, because of that extended marathon speaker vote.
Scott, what's it like on Capitol Hill? It seems like every hour we get a new video from CBS News or from other organizations of Congressman Santos going to the elevator. So what's the scene actually like for someone who's there?
Now, fortunately for Congressman Santos, it's about 30 long steps from his office to the elevator because he's getting met by about a half dozen to a dozen media outlets every time he goes to his office in the Longworth House office building. I say I'm not sure how long this is sustainable. How long will he be able to tolerate that level of scrutiny, that level of a press pack, until he sits down with somebody and gives an extended interview and extended answers to all these questions like, what's up with your background? What's up with the stories you told about your background? Your financial disclosures. Where'd you get the $700,000 you donated your own campaign? And what else is still out there we don't know yet? We'll see how long he's up for this, how long he can tolerate this before giving answers.
Scott, who else have we heard from inside the GOP about Santos?
From some of his New York City area Republican colleagues. They're the ones who've been asked the most questions because they have districts that are contiguous with the 3rd district Mr. Santos represents, or those who answer to the same local media Mr. Santos should be answering to. And at least 2 of them have indicated Santos should step down. The Democrats are having a field day with this, calling for ethics investigations, legal, either Justice Department or police investigations. All of this, though, is met with a vacuum of information from Mr. Santos, who's not answering questions, not speaking. He's letting others speak for him.
At the end of the day, though, Speaker McCarthy is going to have a lot of say over whether Santos stays or goes, pending other investigations, of course. And McCarthy needed Santos's vote during that chaotic scrum last week to get the gavel. Where does McCarthy go from here based on your reporting? I know you talked about his comments earlier, but where do you think he really goes in the coming weeks?
He's still in the same political circumstance he was 5 days ago when he swore in George Santos and the others with a narrow margin of 5 on all key votes. And it's hard to divorce that reality from this moment in which he needs every vote in his conference he can get. If there were a special election for this seat, it is a very competitive seat that could be won by Democrats. Democrats may not be eager for George Santos to leave in the immediate future because he is a political punching bag for them right now, and they're taking a lot of shots.
In terms of the Democrats, Scott, anything else you're paying attention to with Hakeem Jeffries and his response, the Democratic leader?
Really strong response, Bob, to this newly passed House subcommittee on the weaponization of federal government. Almost the Republicans answered to the January 6th committee, their own version of it for the next 2 years. Hakeem Jeffries, in a fiery floor speech late today, called it the Insurrection Protection Panel that may be scrutinizing the FBI, the Justice Department, those that are prosecuting January 6 defendants. And some of the very members who were scrutinized by the January 6 committee, Jim Jordan of Ohio, Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, seem primed to join this new panel. That was a messaging issue for Democrats today. I expect it'll remain one for quite some time. But CBS News has confirmed with Democrats they're not boycotting this committee. They're going to participate in it, unlike Republicans last Congress with the January 6th panel. They don't want to give Republicans a chance to unify and synchronize the message of a select committee.
Scott McFarland, thank you so much for your reporting. That does it for our show today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And a reminder, if you want to watch previous episodes of our program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just go to cbsnews.com/redandblue.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping